The autumn air carried the scent of fallen leaves and fresh coffee as Sage Matthews walked through the glass doors of Lincoln High School. Her backpack, heavier than usual, contained not just textbooks and notebooks, but 2 carefully wrapped sandwiches. The hallways buzzed with the familiar chaos of teenage voices, locker doors slamming, and sneakers squeaking against polished floors. At 17, Sage had developed a routine that set her apart from her classmates. While most students rushed to their first period classes, she made a deliberate detour to the custodial closet near the east wing. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting dancing shadows on the beige walls lined with motivational posters that had seen better days. "Good morning, Mr. Henderson," she called softly, approaching the modest office where the school's head janitor organized his supplies for the day. Walter Henderson looked up from his clipboard, his weathered face breaking into a genuine smile. At 62, he had been cleaning these halls for over 15 years, watching thousands of students pass through, but none had ever acknowledged him quite like Sage did. "Well, if it isn't my favorite early bird," Walter said, setting down his pen. "What brings you by today?" Sage reached into her backpack and pulled out a neatly wrapped sandwich. Turkey and Swiss on whole wheat. Mom made extra again. She placed it on his desk next to a thermos of coffee that had seen countless mornings just like this one. Walter's eyes softened. "Sage, you know you don't have to do this every day. I pack my own lunch." "I know," she replied, adjusting her backpack straps. "But Mom always makes too much, and it would just go to waste otherwise. Besides, you work harder than anyone in this building." The truth was more complicated than Sage let on. Her mother, Diana, worked double shifts at the local diner to support them both after Sage's father had left 3 years earlier. Money was tight, and every extra sandwich represented a small sacrifice that Sage gladly made. She had noticed Walter eating the same peanut butter sandwich every day for months, and something about his quiet dedication reminded her of her mother's resilience. "How's your mother doing?" Walter asked, unwrapping the sandwich with careful appreciation. "She's good. Tired, but good. The diner's been busy with the fall festival coming up." Sage glanced at the clock on the wall. "I should get to class, but I'll see you tomorrow?" "Wouldn't miss it," Walter replied, taking a bite of the sandwich. "This is delicious. Tell your mother I said thank you." As Sage walked toward her AP Literature class, she passed groups of students who barely registered her presence. She wasn't invisible exactly, but she wasn't part of the popular crowd either. Her clothes were clean but clearly secondhand, her shoes practical rather than fashionable. She had learned to navigate the social hierarchy of high school by staying quietly in the middle, neither seeking attention nor avoiding it. Her teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, was already at the whiteboard when Sage slipped into her seat near the back. The discussion topic for the day was about character development in contemporary fiction. And as her classmates debated the motivations of various protagonists, Sage found herself thinking about real-life characters like Walter Henderson. "Sage, what's your take on authentic character development?" Mrs. Rodriguez asked, noticing her thoughtful expression. "I think authentic characters are shaped by small, consistent actions rather than big, dramatic moments," Sage replied. "It's the daily choices that reveal who someone really is." The comment sparked a lively discussion, and Sage felt a familiar sense of satisfaction from contributing meaningfully to the conversation. She might not have the newest clothes or the most popular friends, but she had something that felt more valuable, a clear sense of purpose and an understanding of what truly mattered. During lunch, Sage sat with her small group of friends: Marcus, who shared her love of books, Elena, who was passionate about environmental science, and David, who spent most of his free time volunteering at the animal shelter. They weren't the most popular kids in school, but they were genuine, and that counted for something. "Did you guys hear about the senior class gift committee?" Elena asked, unwrapping her homemade salad. "They're looking for ideas for what to leave behind for the school. Probably another boring plaque that nobody will read," Marcus said, rolling his eyes. "Every year it's the same thing." Sage listened to the conversation while finishing her own modest lunch. She thought about Walter Henderson, who had been part of this school longer than any of the teachers, yet would never be mentioned in any senior class gift. The idea bothered her more than she could articulate. After school, Sage walked to her part-time job at the local bookstore. The pay was minimal, but she loved being surrounded by stories, and her boss, Mrs. Chen, had become something of a mentor. The bookstore occupied a narrow building on Main Street, with floor-to-ceiling shelves that created cozy reading nooks throughout the space. "How was school today?" Mrs. Chen asked as Sage tied on her apron. "Good. We talked about character development in literature class." Sage began organizing a shipment of new releases. "It got me thinking about how we recognize character in real life. That's the beauty of working with books," Mrs. Chen said, settling into her chair behind the counter. "You start to see that the most interesting stories are often about ordinary people doing extraordinary things in small ways." As the afternoon wore on, Sage helped customers find books, restocked shelves, and processed returns. Each interaction reminded her of why she loved this job. Books had the power to connect people to ideas and emotions that transcended their immediate circumstances. When she finally arrived home that evening, she found her mother in the kitchen, preparing sandwiches for the next day's lunch rush at the diner. Diana Matthews looked tired but smiled when she saw her daughter. "How was your day, sweetheart?" Diana asked, not pausing in her sandwich assembly. "Good. I gave Walter his sandwich this morning. He says thank you, by the way." Sage sat at the small kitchen table, watching her mother's efficient movements. "That man works so hard," Diana said. "I'm glad we can do something nice for him." "Mom, do you think small acts of kindness really matter? Like, in the bigger picture?" Diana paused, looking at her daughter thoughtfully. "I think they're the only things that matter, honey. The world is changed by people who care enough to notice what needs doing and then do it, even when nobody's watching." That night, as Sage lay in bed, she thought about her mother's words. Tomorrow would bring another sandwich, another brief conversation with Walter, another day of small choices that somehow felt significant. She had no idea that these quiet moments were building towards something much larger than either of them could imagine. November arrived with a harsh cold snap that turned the school parking lot into a sheet of ice and sent students hurrying through hallways with hunched shoulders and visible breath. Sage continued her morning routine, but she noticed that Walter seemed different lately. His usual cheerful demeanor was tinged with something she couldn't quite identify. "Everything okay, Mr. Henderson?" she asked one particularly frigid Tuesday morning, handing him his daily sandwich. Walter hesitated before answering. "My wife's been in the hospital for a few weeks now. Nothing too serious, but the bills are piling up, and I've been working extra shifts to try to keep up." Sage felt a familiar tightness in her chest, the same feeling she got when she watched her mother count and recount the bills at their kitchen table. "I'm sorry to hear that. Is there anything I can do?" "You do plenty already," Walter said, gesturing to the sandwich. "This little bit of kindness you show me every day. It means more than you know, especially now." As Sage walked to her first class, she couldn't shake the image of Walter working late into the night, mopping floors and emptying trash cans while worrying about medical bills. The contrast between his situation and the casual wealth she saw displayed by many of her classmates felt stark and unfair. During lunch that day, her friend Marcus mentioned that he was struggling with his college applications. "My essay prompt is about describing someone who has influenced your perspective on life," he said, staring at his laptop screen with frustration. "I can't think of anyone interesting enough." "What about writing about influence that comes from unexpected places?" Sage suggested. "Sometimes the people who shape us most are the ones we don't even think to write about." The conversation stayed with her throughout the afternoon. In AP Literature, they were discussing the concept of unsung heroes in American literature, and Sage found herself thinking about all the unsung heroes in her own life. Her mother, Walter, Mrs. Chen at the bookstore, even the crossing guard who made sure elementary students got to school safely every day. That evening at the bookstore, Sage was helping Mrs. Chen organize the community bulletin board when she noticed a flyer for the annual Hometown Heroes essay contest sponsored by the local newspaper. The winner would receive a $500 scholarship and have their essay published in the Sunday edition. "Mrs. Chen, do you think ordinary people can be heroes?" Sage asked, reading the contest guidelines. "I think ordinary people are the only real heroes," Mrs. Chen replied without hesitation. The ones who show up every day, who care for others without expecting recognition, who make the world better in small ways that add up to something magnificent. The seed of an idea began to form in Sage's mind. Over the next few days, she found herself paying closer attention to Walter's work around the school. She noticed how he always had a kind word for students who seemed troubled, how he stayed late to set up for school events, how he quietly fixed things that were broken before anyone even noticed they needed repair. She also began noticing other students' interactions with Walter. Most ignored him completely, stepping around him as if he were part of the furniture. A few were polite but distant. Only a handful, like Sage, seemed to see him as a person worth knowing. One Thursday morning, Sage arrived at school to find Walter dealing with a plumbing emergency in the main hallway. Water was seeping from under the bathroom door, and he was working frantically to contain the flood before students arrived for first period. "Can I help?" Sage asked, setting down her backpack. "Just keep an eye out for students coming this way," Walter said, his voice strained with effort. "I don't want anyone slipping on this wet floor." For the next 20 minutes, Sage directed her arriving classmates around the mess while Walter worked to stop the leak. When the crisis was finally under control, she was late for her first class, but she didn't regret the delay. "You didn't have to do that," Walter said, wiping sweat from his forehead despite the cold morning air. "Yes, I did," Sage replied simply. "We're in this together." The phrase surprised her as she said it, but she realized it was true. They were all in this together, whether they acknowledged it or not. The school was a community, and Walter was as much a part of it as any student or teacher. That afternoon, Sage sat down at her computer and began writing her essay for the Hometown Heroes contest. She wrote about Walter Henderson, about his quiet dedication and the small acts of service that kept their school running. She wrote about the sandwich routine that had taught her more about kindness than any lecture or textbook ever could. The words flowed easily, carrying with them all the observations and emotions she had been accumulating over the past few months. She wrote about how Walter remembered students' names, how he always had a smile even on difficult days, how he took pride in his work even when others didn't notice or appreciate it. As she wrote, Sage realized that the essay wasn't just about Walter. It was about the choice to see and value the people around us, the decision to recognize that everyone's contribution matters, and the understanding that small acts of kindness can create ripples that extend far beyond their immediate impact. When she finished, she read the essay aloud to her mother, who listened with tears in her eyes. "That's beautiful, sweetheart," Diana said. "You really captured something important. Do you think I should submit it?" Sage asked, suddenly feeling nervous about sharing such personal observations with strangers. "I think the world needs to hear stories like this," her mother replied. "And I think Walter deserves to be recognized for who he is." The next morning, Sage printed out her essay and sealed it in an envelope addressed to the local newspaper. As she handed Walter his daily sandwich, she felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension about what she had set in motion. "You seem different today," Walter observed. "Good, different. Like you're carrying some kind of secret." "Maybe I am," Sage said with a smile. "A good secret, I hope." She had no way of knowing that her essay would do more than just win a contest. It would set in motion a chain of events that would transform not just her own life, but the lives of everyone around her. December brought the first real snowfall of the season, blanketing Lincoln High School in a pristine white that made even the most mundane buildings look magical. Sage continued her morning routine with Walter, but now their conversations had an added layer of warmth. Without knowing why, she felt more connected to him and to the purpose behind their daily exchange. 3 weeks after submitting her essay, Sage was shelving books at the bookstore when Mrs. Chen approached her with a copy of the Sunday newspaper, her face beaming with pride. "Sage, you need to see this," she said, opening the paper to reveal a full-page spread with the headline, "Local Student Honors Unsung Hero in Award-Winning Essay." Sage's heart raced as she read her own words printed in the newspaper, accompanied by a photo of Walter Henderson that the newspaper had apparently taken at the school. The article mentioned that her essay had won first place in the Hometown Heroes contest, and that she would receive a $500 scholarship. "I can't believe it," Sage whispered, reading the article twice to make sure it was real. "Believe it? Mrs. Chen said. "You've given Walter Henderson the recognition he deserves, and you've shown this community what it means to really see the people around us." That evening, Sage's phone began ringing with calls from friends, classmates, and even some teachers who had seen the article. The attention felt overwhelming and wonderful at the same time, but her biggest concern was how Walter would react when he learned about the essay. She didn't have to wait long to find out. When she arrived at school Monday morning, she found Walter waiting by his office with a copy of the newspaper in his hands and tears in his eyes. "Sage," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I don't know what to say." "I hope you're not upset," she said quickly. "I just wanted people to know how important you are to this school." Walter shook his head, smiling through his tears. "Upset? Child, this is the most beautiful thing anyone has ever done for me." My wife cried when she read it from her hospital bed. She said it was better than any medicine. The conversation was interrupted by Principal Johnson, who appeared with a small group of people Sage didn't recognize. "Sage, Walter, I'd like you to meet some visitors from the district office," Principal Johnson said. "They're here because of the newspaper article." Over the next hour, Sage learned that her essay had created quite a stir beyond just the local community. The district superintendent had read it and was so moved that she was implementing a new program to recognize and celebrate the contributions of support staff throughout the school system. Walter would be the first recipient of the newly created Unsung Hero Award. But that was only the beginning. Throughout the week, Sage noticed changes happening around the school. Students who had never spoken to Walter before were greeting him in the hallways. Teachers were stopping to thank him for his work. The student council announced plans to create a permanent display honoring all the school's support staff. "This is incredible," Elena said during lunch. "Your essay has changed the whole atmosphere of the school." "I didn't expect any of this," Sage admitted. "I just wanted to write about someone who deserved recognition." "That's what makes it so powerful," Marcus added. "You weren't trying to change the world. You were just trying to honor someone who mattered to you." The attention continued to grow. A local television station wanted to do a feature story about Sage and Walter. The regional newspaper picked up the story, and soon it was being shared on social media platforms throughout the state. Messages began arriving from people in other communities who were inspired to recognize their own unsung heroes. Sage found herself struggling to process all the attention. She had always been comfortable in the background, and suddenly she was being asked to speak at school board meetings and community events. The scholarship money would help with college expenses, but more importantly, she was discovering that her words had the power to create real change. The most meaningful response came from an unexpected source. One afternoon, while Sage was restocking the biography section at the bookstore, a woman approached her with a hesitant smile. "Excuse me, are you Sage Matthews?" the woman asked. "Yes, I am. I'm Carol Henderson, Walter's wife. I wanted to thank you in person for what you wrote about my husband." Sage felt tears welling up in her eyes. "Mrs. Henderson, how are you feeling? Walter told me you were in the hospital." "Much better now," Carol said, her eyes sparkling with gratitude. "But I want you to know that your essay did more than just recognize Walter's work. It reminded our whole family that what he does matters. Our grandchildren read that article and felt proud of their grandfather in a way they never had before." The conversation lasted for over an hour, with Carol sharing stories about Walter's dedication to his work and his family. Sage learned that Walter had been quietly helping students for years, sometimes providing them with supplies they needed or simply being a listening ear when they were troubled. "He never talked about those things at home," Carol said. "He's too modest. But your essay captured the essence of who he is." As winter deepened, Sage began to understand that her simple act of bringing Walter a sandwich each day had been the beginning of something much larger. The recognition he was receiving was wonderful, but the real transformation was happening in the hearts and minds of the people around them. Students were beginning to notice other staff members who had been invisible to them before. Teachers were taking time to acknowledge the work of cafeteria workers, maintenance staff, and office personnel. The school was becoming a more connected, more caring community. The essay contest scholarship would help with college, But Sage was discovering that the real reward was seeing how small acts of kindness could multiply and spread in ways she never could have imagined. As she prepared for her final semester of high school, she felt a deep sense of purpose that had nothing to do with grades or achievements and everything to do with the simple power of recognizing the humanity in everyone around her. Spring arrived early that year, bringing with it the familiar anxiety and excitement of senior year's final months. Sage found herself navigating college acceptance letters, scholarship interviews, and the bittersweet realization that her daily routine with Walter Henderson would soon come to an end. The local newspaper essay had created ripples that extended far beyond Lincoln High School. Sage received letters from students across the country who had been inspired to recognize unsung heroes in their own communities. A regional foundation had even created a scholarship program based on her essay, designed to support students who demonstrated exceptional character through service to others. "I still can't believe all this happened because of a sandwich," Sage said to Walter during one of their morning conversations in May. "It wasn't about the sandwich," Walter replied, organizing supplies in his office. "It was about seeing me as a person worth knowing. That's a gift not everyone possesses." The relationship between Sage and Walter had evolved over the months since the essay's publication. He had become something of a grandfather figure to her, offering advice about college and life with the wisdom of someone who had learned to find meaning in everyday work. "I'm going to miss our morning chats," Sage admitted. "Me too," Walter said. "But I have a feeling this isn't really an ending. It's more like a beginning." As graduation approached, Sage learned that she had been selected as one of the student speakers for the ceremony. The honor was based not just on her academic performance, but on her demonstrated commitment to community service and her ability to inspire others through her writing. "I'm terrified," she confided to her mother while they sat at their kitchen table, surrounded by college preparation paperwork. "Speaking in front of hundreds of people is completely different from writing an essay. Just speak from your heart," Diana advised. "That's what you did in the essay, and look how that turned out." The weeks leading up to graduation were filled with senior activities, final exams, and the emotional process of saying goodbye to teachers and classmates. Sage found herself reflecting on how much had changed since the beginning of the school year. The shy girl who had quietly brought sandwiches to the janitor had become someone who was comfortable advocating for others and speaking up for what she believed in. The night before graduation, Sage walked through the empty hallways of Lincoln High School one last time. The building felt different in the quiet evening light, filled with memories and possibilities. She stopped by Walter's office where he was preparing for the next day's ceremony. "Big day tomorrow," he said, looking up from his work. "For both of us," Sage replied. "I heard you're getting a special recognition during the ceremony." Walter's face reddened slightly. "The school board decided to honor all the support staff this year. They said it was inspired by your essay." "That's wonderful. It's about time." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, both understanding that this represented the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. "Walter," Sage said finally, "I want you to know that you taught me something important this year. You showed me that dignity comes from taking pride in whatever work you do, and that kindness doesn't require recognition to be meaningful. And you taught me that being seen and valued can change everything," Walter replied. "Thank you for that gift." Graduation day dawned clear and bright, with the kind of perfect weather that made everything seem possible. Sage woke early, her stomach fluttering with nerves about her speech. She had practiced it dozens of times, but standing before her entire graduating class and their families felt monumentally different from rehearsing in her bedroom mirror. The ceremony was held on the football field, with hundreds of folding chairs arranged in neat rows facing a temporary stage. Sage sat with her fellow graduates, watching as families filled the bleachers, and the spring breeze carried the scent of freshly cut grass across the field. Principal Johnson began the ceremony with remarks about the graduating class's achievements and potential. Then came the recognition of support staff, a new tradition that the school board had implemented based on the community response to Sage's essay. "This year, we're taking a moment to recognize the people who make our school community possible," Principal Johnson announced. "These are the individuals who create the environment where learning can flourish." One by one, the support staff members were introduced and honored. When Walter Henderson's name was called, The audience erupted in applause that lasted nearly 2 minutes. Sage felt tears streaming down her face as she watched him walk across the stage, his face beaming with pride and dignity. Walter Henderson has served our school community for 15 years, Principal Johnson continued. He has been a quiet leader, a trusted friend to students and staff, and an example of how excellence in any role can make a difference in countless lives. The applause continued as Walter accepted his recognition, and Sage could see him scanning the crowd until his eyes found hers. He smiled and nodded, a gesture that felt like a completion of the journey they had taken together. Finally, it was time for the student speakers. Sage walked to the podium on unsteady legs, looking out at the sea of faces that included her mother, her friends, her teachers, and Walter Henderson. "Fellow graduates, families, and friends," she began, her voice stronger than she had expected. "When I started my senior year, I thought I understood what it meant to be successful. I thought it was about grades and achievements and getting into the right college." She paused, finding Walter's face in the crowd. "But this year, I learned that success is actually about connection. It's about seeing the people around us and recognizing that we're all part of something bigger than ourselves. It's about understanding that small acts of kindness can create ripples that extend far beyond what we can imagine." Sage spoke about the lessons she had learned from Walter, about the importance of dignity in all work, and about the power of recognition to transform communities. She talked about how a simple sandwich had taught her more about character than any textbook ever could. "As we leave Lincoln High School today, we're not just carrying diplomas," she concluded. "We're carrying the responsibility to see and value the people around us, to recognize that everyone has something important to contribute, and to understand that our individual success is meaningless unless it lifts others up as well." The applause was overwhelming, but what mattered most to Sage was seeing the pride in her mother's eyes and the emotional smile on Walter Henderson's face. As the ceremony concluded and graduates threw their caps into the air, Sage felt a profound sense of completion. The scared girl who had started the year quietly bringing sandwiches to the janitor had found her voice and her purpose. She was headed to college in the fall, armed with scholarships and a clear understanding of what she wanted to do with her life. But first, she had one more sandwich to deliver. After the ceremony, as families and friends celebrated across the parking lot, Sage found Walter packing up his supplies. "I brought you something," she said, pulling a wrapped sandwich from her purse. "One for the road?" Walter asked, his eyes twinkling. "One for the future," Sage replied, "because some traditions are worth continuing, even when everything else changes." As they shared the sandwich and talked about their plans for the future, Sage realized that her name echoing in the graduation hall had been just the beginning. The real echo would continue in all the lives she touched, all the people she chose to see and recognize, and all the small acts of kindness that would ripple outward from this moment. The sandwich had been simple. The recognition had been profound. But the lesson would last forever, that we all have the power to transform our communities, one person at a time, one act of kindness at a time, one moment of genuine human connection at a time. In the end, that was the greatest education of all.